Hi, I have with me today AmberJane Arquette, and Amber is a member of the LightSong community, and she's a very active member. And she has branched off into many healing modalities, and sounds like she's been raised in a lot of them too. I got a lot of nice insight on AmberJane's mom the other day when we were visiting. But she's written a couple books. One's called Plant Wisdom that has to do with essential oils, and the other one of altars creating sacred space. And you can get to AmberJane through her website. And I didn't write that website number down. Is it amberjane.com?
Yeah, AmberJaneHealing.com.
Okay. It's AmberJaneHealing.com. And that will be listed also in the write-up of today's podcast. But if you're looking for a good resource, AmberJane is one of those that can help you in many different ways. She's been trained shamanically as well as in her own work with the plant spirits. So AmberJane, welcome.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Thank you for being here. One of the things that's coming up soon for LightSong School of 21st Century Shamanism, is that we're having our basic introductory class, October 3rd and 4th, and that's 2020. And in this class, we're learning how to work with our power allies, our helping spirits in the invisible realms. And this is an introductory course, and this is where AmberJane started with LightSong, and anybody that's with LightSong starts. And I bring that up because many times people will be on the fence. Am I ready for this? Is this what I want? I'm not sure. I kind of feel the calling. What does the calling mean? All these different things, we call it being tapped on your shoulder. And this is a wonderful opportunity because this class then is a gateway class that opens up things for continued training in shamanism as well as in energy medicine. And you have to have it. You have to have it to do anything really in any type of shamanic study or in our version of energy medicine, because it teaches you how to journey and how to make contact with these allies. And AmberJane has taken this to a beautiful unfolding. Her life is an expression now of these teachings. And I thought it would be a lot of fun to have her story on here because she's got a very interesting story to share. And with that, AmberJane, I'm going to hand it over to you. Okay. And what would you like to tell us about your experience with, working with the spirits?
I have Joe Shoemaker to thank because at the time I think Annalise, my daughter, who is now 9, was probably 3. And he, for like 18 months, kept telling me every time the level 1 would come around, he was like, you should do this, you should do this. And I was I just had so much resistance, and so much so I don't even think I really knew what I was going to, even though I had signed up. Which, just as a caveat, I feel like every step of the way from that first decision of, making my payment and trying, I'll tell you how my journey to get to level 1 physically was a teaching in how when we don't have all our soul pieces and when we don't, aren't empowered and whole and healed and living in our vibrancy, how just influential and shadowing, you say that often, Jan, like it's something is shadowing over you to be able to see the path in front of you even. And so that really showed up even just trying to get to level 1. So I had mixed up the addresses. So I drove all the way to your home, and I was like, I'm going a residential area. This cannot be right. And then I realized it was on another part of town. And at one point I was like, can I even show up late to this? Like, this is crazy. I should just go home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just at that time so stressed and overwhelmed by a lot of things that it felt like, you know, I was driving through the mud to get to level 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I got there late, and later found out that like I had missed everybody's introductions, which then I was like, well, that's probably good for me because I don't need to know everybody's stories. Because that was one of my overwhelms, was being around a lot of people. Because ever since I was young, I just had gifts where I was getting more information than what was talked about. You know, the 5 senses are talked about and nothing else beyond that is talked about, yet I was having all of this extra information. And even with my mom divorced my biological dad when I was 2, and we went to go live on this farm, and I would talk to the kid spirits there. And I didn't realize this until I started going through my own healings. I started having compassionate spirit release and soul retrievals, that I was had been playing with these spirit kids that weren't alive, didn't have bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So the most profound thing for me with level 1 is seeing just the magnificent light and feeling the container that is created in level 1. And then even telepathically, like communicating, and I don't even know if I really had the language of it then, but I could just sense all of these things going on, but it was all good things, like telling me that I was in the right place, and I could feel the healings already happening for me in that space, which was really profound. And then when we went and met our power ally, I met Spider Ome, which you introduced me to, and she did a dismemberment on me. Oh man, I was bawling. But she told me the wonders of the universe, and like held me in her belly, and I had never felt that safe. And that was part of the tears, was I had never ever felt that safe and taken care of. And I felt that most of my life, because I had been raised with a metaphysical science church, which is this idea that like the universe is a big soup and our soul is a big soup and we're all one, which doesn't bring it into a personal relationship with spirit. Whereas I feel like the shamanic perspective is cultivating like you in a personal relationship with spirit. And so that was so like such a lifesaver for me.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to clarify a couple things because you're using some terms that some people might not be familiar with, but it sounds as if you were, as a child, possibly interacting with imaginary friends. Would that be a term that would match your experience?
Mm-hmm. I was always labeled as the child with a wild imagination.
Yes. And that's, oh my goodness, it's so wonderful that your parents did not stifle that on some level, because yes, kids can have these imaginary friends that are really, they haven't lost their ability to see between the worlds or see into the non-ordinary dimensions. And so they're seeing the spirits that are around them, which is beautiful. I know we had that in my family too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you started receiving healings, and the two of the terms that AmberJane mentioned were soul retrieval, which is a type of ceremony that brings back soul parts for a person that you actually lose through difficulty. The psychological word for it is disassociation, and you disassociate when you go through any type of trauma. And in shamanism, we call that soul loss. And then you do a soul retrieval to bring back those parts. So just to clarify that for some folks, because not everybody knows those terms. And then dismemberment also is something that you mentioned. And one of the things that the spirits have said is something important for everybody to do every day is to dismember and to merge. And so what that means when you're dismembering, you're letting go is what you're doing, because we are a product of holding on to things. We hold on to events, we hold on to memories, we hold on to words that were spoken to us, we hold on to issues, all this kind of stuff. We hold on to this. And as you so beautifully stated in your opening statement, you said you were overshadowed. And those things can overshadow you, and you forget to see your radiance because you're overshadowed with all of these different energies that you've been holding on to. And so a dismemberment is when you are very purposely letting go of those and taking those apart. And it can be graphic of like dismembering your body, or it can be mental, either one. But there's a process of making an intention of letting those things go. And according to the spirits, they just say, you know, that is a practice that you should do every day, because we're constantly being overshadowed by things and not being in it keeps you out of the present moment is what it does. And because you're thinking about something that has happened or something that's going to happen, and it has no bearing on you actually in your creation powers, unless you allow it to. If you allow it to, then it can really stifle you. But if you keep clearing it, you have a freedom of yourself.
Yeah, and even the more access, what I notice is more access to my own inner authority.
Yes.
Because I couldn't hear my voice saying, you need to get there. Like this other voice started saying, just go home. It was almost like a struggle inside, when now I so clearly hear my own authority, and I have such an easier time making big life decisions for myself because of these tools, and because of the ability to even ask my allies to go and have a dismemberment, and ask my allies and say, hey, there's this big decision coming up. Can I have some insight on my own inner authority and what is best for, you know, and I this is another thing that I hold dear, is that language of my most benevolent outcome, because it again lets go of that attachment of what I think might be the best, or what might even feel the best, and opens up the possibility to something greater outside of that.
Right. And isn't that fascinating, you know, that our intention can manifest in such a dynamic and beautiful way, that you can intend for the most benevolent outcome, and then that puts that outcome into motion as a possibility. And there's almost like a declaration that happens with it. And why aren't we doing that all the time? Why are we can sell ourselves short by trying to figure things out and not having all of the data or the pieces or the bigger picture, instead of just saying, I call forth the most benevolent outcome, and then let that start unfolding for us. And it's always better. It's always better and bigger and more wonderful than anything that we can imagine.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing that I love about that is those words are almost like a law. Like if you're asking for the most benevolent outcome, that is what's going to happen. It's an energy that goes into motion that then manifests for you. you don't have to worry about it, or you don't have to fret over it, because you are, you call it you use the word inner authority. It's like the inner part of you is putting something into creation for
Mm-hmm.
yourself through your words. Yeah, that was really nice that you said that. A lot of people get confused with inner authority. They don't really know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe it, AmberJane?
My inner authority is like the truth of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like at I think of the core of my being, there is a clarity and a knowing that's so true
Mm-hmm.
to that it doesn't need all the other aspects and stories and details and avenues. It just gets right down to like that, almost like touching on the basic need. It's like I might think that I need clothing, but really, I need to feel safe
Mm-hmm.
and warm, and that my body is protected.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get out into those more elaborate definitions or meanings of,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, how it
I
could
like that.
come into being.
One of the things that I would also emphasize that it's not,
Mm-hmm. That's always,
it's not having power over someone
yes.
with, like taking authority over somebody else. I've watched people do this, or heard people do this with, they're saying they're finding their voice,
Mm-hmm.
and then they use that to, rip somebody a new one, so to speak.
Yeah.
They can be very demanding and authoritative, and that's not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That inner authority is a part of you that's like creation or creator, source. It's loving. It's a loving guidance. And it's not about you having power over someone. It's that there's an empowerment there for yourself that is guiding you in what you need to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of the both and that we often say, whereas my inner authority is always thinking of the win-win both and.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's honoring me in relationship to the whole.
Right.
It's not that, yeah, it's definitely not that power over or, this is my way. So you better just jump, jump on that.
Get out of my way.
Yeah, yeah, get out of my way. Um, yeah, to share. So to go back to my journey with LightSong is after then it was 3 days. We did a Friday night, Saturday, and a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home to my husband and I said, I think I don't have a choice. I think I'm in this. It's 18 months, but I think that this is the thing that I need to be doing.
Uh-huh.
Because I had spent a lot of my time through my 20s and 30s numbing myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I did belly dancing, and even though that was doesn't seem like a form of numbing, it was a form of getting outside validation for who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did, bartending for 10 years. And so there was a lot of things that, and I could add to that list, but there were a lot of things that I did to kind of manage all of the, what you call clairs, like the clairvoyant, clairaudient, the extra like sensory information that I was getting
Mm-hmm.
that, again, wasn't talked about. And when something isn't talked about, there's this feeling of being really lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then questioning the self, right? So then I would question my inner truth of what I was experiencing. So when I came home to my husband, I was like, I have a feeling this is going to be a wild ride. So I entered level 2, and I'm sure this is not the case for everybody, but almost everyone I've ever experienced or heard from, because now I've assisted level 2, is that level 2 is really profound. It is like this 1.5 year process of, you know, unpacking untruths and beliefs that don't serve and stories and getting to know yourself on a bigger level, and then having all of these beautiful tools that you practice in this community that can hold, you know, beautiful sacred space with, and you get to come and say all of the wacky things that would make you feel like a weirdo out in the world. And so for me, level 2 was just an immense amount of healing that 6 months in, I then decided to add level 3. And
You're on the speed course.
I was on the speed course. I was like, give it to me.
Yeah.
And I went to practicum, and I think I did stress my family out a little bit. But it's, you know, and so we had to manage that a little bit. But I was gonna say that I had my daughter, and it was like my psychic abilities just blew open. It was like my whole body blew wide open. And I remember, so I had my daughter at my home, and I remember I didn't have the language for it at the time, but I went on a journey to like the stars, the universe, the cosmos. And I was spending my time there. And when I didn't know how to come back down into my body very well. And so I was hiding out in my house with my baby for almost a year. And it was beautiful. We were just in this baby bubble. And so I feel like without LightSong, I wouldn't be as like, I wouldn't prosper and thrive. I would still be at this level of trying to survive and manage what really felt like overwhelm every day, and just rawness, raw nerves. And so yeah, level 2 was such a blessing. And then level 3 really helped me kind of hold higher frequencies. And really just, you know, sometimes even in your invocations, you talk about unwinding the DNA. And I really felt like in level 3, my physical body felt like it was changing. And to be able to almost be a conduit for spirit and goodness and divine energy and Reiki, and is just such a gift. I mean, it's so pleasurable and feels so needed for the planet.
I just had a conversation a couple days ago with a person that was saying something similar, that again, she's very extrasensory, you know, a lot of psychic ability, a lot of able to move into those clairs, the, you know, clairvoyant, clairaudient that you're speaking of. And that feeling of being ungrounded like that scared her. So it made her think that she had to ground, think that she had to stop doing things and to ground. And one of the things that the spirits said to me years ago, because that's the way that I was trained in my training with shamanism, was to bring people back and ground them. Okay. And they said to me, stop bringing people back. And I said, why? And they said, we get them out to these places, which is a very high frequency. And then you bring them back to the normal, which we're trying to break them out of. And so it's not a matter of trying to ground. It's a matter of letting that vibration, like you're actually reaching something that many people are trying to attain. And then you have to learn how to navigate your world from that place. And so like the words that you just used were, I became like this conduit, you know, and they actually said trees can be very helpful for this, because a tree, if you think of the basic shape of a tree, it's kind of like hourglassy, only not so narrow, but they've got this unit that's down and in, but they also have this ability to be up and open.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily, it's like, yes, I'm centered, but I'm really open for the information instead
Mm-hmm.
of just pointing all the information into the grounding. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I love the tree symbolism, and I love the tree nation because it
Mhm,
helps with
mhm,
that, like,
mhm,
that connection, of below and above.
mhm,
So there's not, uh,
mhm,
yeah, there's something about grounding that feels, um, inaccurate. And I think I've been thinking about this for a little while, about how, what if we looked at our bodies and our mind? So like lately we've been looking at our minds as computers, and
mhm.
how we can, like, I just took compassionate spirit release.
Uploading, downloading.
Yeah, upload and download, right? And so then what if we thought of our bodies as, like beacons? Like, what if we weren't just human beings having a human being life? What if we were actually like broadcast towers that
Mhm,
were pulling and able to be this, wire that carries all this healing, beautiful, vibrant energy through our bodies to the earth? For what purpose, I'm not sure exactly.
mhm,
Maybe for ascension, maybe for that global healing that we've been asking for. But I've just been thinking about my body a lot, and the tree symbolizes that openness, and then the channel, and then the relationship with the earth plane.
mhm. Yeah, and the tree can help you, like even leaning up against a tree or putting your hands against a tree, asking the tree to help you realign and harmonize on the inside, to be able to carry this information again in the most benevolent way,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're able to function. Like, we go back to that intention.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, what is your intention? Well, my intention is to do this in the most benevolent way, instead of, oh no, oh God, I need to ground, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really different intention
Mm-hmm.
that can take you to a different outcome, instead of using your resources. And, and I found it very interesting, because I think many of us go through a dramatic change in our vibration that can feel very odd and very different. And the key is to not try to go back to the familiar,
Mm-hmm.
but to hold that space, that things come in gently and beautifully and for the most benevolent outcome, and let those types of things then find a new baseline within you.
Yeah.
Because again, we are definitely wanting to raise our vibrations. That
Mm-hmm.
is a big quest of where we are in humanity on the planet right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I agree, grounding is not a great word, because it implies something different, but I think we'll come up with a better word for it at some time, and maybe it's a harmonizing, harmonizing with your new energy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm glad that, and I think mentioning that the process of, going through, like when I think of my process of the healing that I experienced through level 1 and level 2, and then getting to level 3, which is really, like you said, changing the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
um I remember there were times where it felt so uncomfortable, like the amount of energy that was trying to, it was almost like stretching a muscle, but it was this
Mm-hmm.
energetic muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And through the process of being in the discomfort or the newness, right? Now I know it's newness, not, I don't define it as discomfort anymore. And then having that relationship again with these beautiful allies, my body protector, my gatekeeper that's helping me attune to adjust to this frequency that is coming through, built up so much experiential safety in my life that it just blows my mind how safe I feel in the world. And when people call me about, well, this tragedy is happening, how are you doing? The fires are happening, how are you doing? All these other things that are happening. I'm not that sensitive, overwhelmed, processing the sadness of the world person anymore. I'm able to acknowledge and come into compassion and be like, okay, what is it that I'm praying for today? How am I contributing to help and that, and so to me, that has just been really amazing, personal benefit of learning these ways, learning these teachings.
I've had so many people call me and say similar things about the situation that we've been dealing with in Portland, Oregon right now, the West Coast, California too, but being consumed with wildfires, and a lot of LightSong people have had to evacuate. My daughter had to evacuate her home, and her 4 kids and husband were at my house, during this time for about a week, 5 days or a week. And the comments across the board is, I was shocked at how well and how differently I handled things, because I had this medicine bag or this tool bag of inner tools to use how to deal with this type of duress and distress, and how I was going to show up for it. And how you then show up for it molds your experience and what you manifest then as your reality. And that those calls would just make me just glow. I was so happy. In fact, one woman, interestingly enough, lost everything. Her home burnt to the ground, and she lost everything. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, our attitude has been that we're safe and this is great. And we're sitting here designing our new house that insurance is going to pay for.
Wow.
So we're going to get a new house out of the deal.
Yeah.
And, it's the silver lining that, in her case, they had good insurance that was going to cover all that. But it's not necessarily having something happen to you, but it's how you respond to it. And I think that response then again paves the way for the reality then that you're going to live in. And so her reality then was going to be that of gain, that she was really going to gain from this. And she's declaring that and making it so, and so it becomes. Versus if you go into a deep depression, that's when you hear these things. Well, I'm sorry, there was a clause in the insurance and that didn't cover it.
Yeah.
It's like you're creating those realities. In fact, the spirits brought in the term, I think you were there when this happened, they said your response ability, response ability, how you respond is an ability that then creates a reality for you that you then live in.
Yeah, you're responsible for some part of the manifestation of that. Yeah. I keep giggling, and it brings me so much joy to think about everybody walking around looking for the silver linings all the time. That's what world I want to live in and help manifest, is that people just are always looking at the glass half full, and like, how is this working out for me? Because there was something you said, you know, about when we were talking about the most benevolent outcome of things, is that we can have beautiful, compassionate, loving, amazing healing sessions. And when we ask for that benevolent outcome, it might mean that the house burns down, or it might mean that the job is lost, or the relationship doesn't stay together. And I feel like now that I'm stepping fully into practitioner work, is helping the people who come to me understand that no matter what falls apart, it really is just trying to uncover a greater, you know, future for you, even more joy that you just haven't thought of yet, or you didn't know that was possible.
Mm-hmm. It goes back to what we were originally talking about, is about dismemberment.
Mm-hmm.
If you're holding on to things, you hold a particular shape or a particular way of being. And if physically things dismember, if you lose the job, if you lose the relationship, if you lose the home, whatever, again, that dismemberment allows there to be that new thing that emerges from it that would not emerge even in your, and that old thing might have been making you suffer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm making this part of the story up. I don't know if this to be true, but I'm using it as a hypothetical situation. It's almost as if, you know, you're in a job that you hate. You don't want to be in it, but you don't quit. You just don't quit, and you're suffering. So you get fired. You
Okay,
know,
that happened to me. So it's not hypothetical anymore.
yeah.
I actually worked, and I got a new boss, and he was so hard on me for months. I would come home and I'd cry to Justin, but I could not think outside of my job. I was like, this is the best job I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And finally they fired me, not even like in a good way. Like, they didn't really have a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
They just intimidated me. And so I was like, okay, I'm fired.
Mm-hmm.
I got amazing benefits from that. Being fired, it was like a well-paid vacation for a while.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. We have to understand, well, at least for me, and this is my belief system that's speaking here, but I believe that the universe or the spirits or my allies, however you want to say that, has always got my back. Mm-hmm. I pray for the highest outcome. I pray for the highest good. I pray for the most benevolent outcome. And I know that they've got my back. So whatever is happening, I know that something is going to evolve out of that into something that is good. It's my next step. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's been hard for me because this last year, my husband passed away, who was, you know, my everything. And that's one of the things that I have to keep doing with that, is that, okay, I know that there's a bigger picture here. I don't know what that is. And sometimes I didn't want it. You know, it's like, no, I don't want that picture. I want my old picture. Yeah. But I do believe that something's going to happen that is just going to be, okay, this is where I am now. And this is all part of my purpose and the plan. And you just hold on to that. And I think that holding on to that helps bring that into fruition. So I had to learn to not be in such resistance to what was happening, because the resistance stalls things out. It just stalls it out. And of course, there's a process. I think the death process of a loved one is a little bit different from losing a job or, you know, losing a home or something like that. But I still had to very much look at my resistance to it when I was ready. I wasn't ready right away, but you know, in that process of when you're resisting something, it doesn't allow that new thing to start growing because you're holding on so tight and so I also have been practicing those dismemberment journeys where it's like, okay, I want to let this go, not let him go, but let go my resistance
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That
So,
makes sense.
mm-hmm.
There was something on my mind, but it'll come back if it's supposed to.
Well, this has taken off for you in different ways with your own practice, right? You've written 2 books now,
Yeah. Oh
and
my gosh. Well, just even writing the plant wisdom book, which I think I still have plans. Spirit's been leading me in other ways. But to use the journey method, because I could feel the aliveness and the frequency. I finally figured out that it was a frequency healing that the essential oils offered, because it's like concentrated plant life essence, basically.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And they would come to me intuitively and tell me that they worked on more than just the body and the emotions. And I was also following Rose Ingraham, who was talking about the spiritual aspects and healing powers of plants. And so I was like, well, why don't I just journey to the plants?
yeah.
So I started having conversations with them that way, and um, got so much information and started sharing it with some friends. And they asked, they were like, are you going to write a book? Like, people should know this.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So that was a really fun process. And then I feel like, you know, later in my studies, I added Reiki. I took your level 4 class. I just kind of, I took, now I have soul retrieval. And so I've just been going through the bachelor's program.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because I always thought it would be super cool to be a doctor of shamanism. So that's my overall goal is
It is.
is to, and I get to share that with people. Like, yeah, I am so close to graduating with a bachelor's in spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've just, really creating different, I'm creating a healing practice. And I also am realizing that people really are craving not only safe places to have permission to speak about things that seem really weird to me. I mean, I remember one client, we did a follow-up after his soul retrieval, and he's like, okay, I know I could tell you this, but my plant started talking to me. And I was like, oh honey, that's the most mild, weird thing I've heard in a long time. And I think that's what I really have appreciated so much about the LightSong classes and the containers of being in classes with you, is that there's this permission for all of those things to be said and shared. And so to be able to bring that to clients where, yeah, you are going to be accepted and loved as the person that you show up in front of me. I have no expectations of you like being normal or being perfect or just no expectations. So but one thing I guess I wanted to say is that I noticed that people are looking for a journey. So like the light song classes definitely help you go through a journey of transformation and learning and expansion. But I'm also noticing that people want like a healing journey that's not, maybe, because the only other ones that I really know of are like Sundance or, plant medicine journeys.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're teaching us as practitioners, we can really help people go through a journey of healing. Like it can start out with just vitality retrieval, like pulling essence in and nourishing the self, and then we can start taking off the layers,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a dismemberment or other modalities, and then we start bringing back the soul pieces. And so we can really help someone get to that really big transformation and get again to that truer version of themselves, which then has a broadcast and a manifesting power of that life that they've been desiring, that maybe they don't even have words for,
Right.
but have an inkling or a dream of.
I believe that so many people that come to shamanism or energy medicine have been what I fondly call tapped on the shoulder. You know, like they have these urges, they have these inclinations, they have these wonderments, they have these longings. Again, possibly they can't put words to it. Maybe it's just curiosity. And maybe it showed up in fearful ways, you know, where they feel as if they've been pursued by something. Mm-hmm. But the point being is that LightSong, the way that I wanted it designed, is that it's a place to belong. Mm-hmm. That there's a whole part of our nature in the Western world that is not addressed, and that's our spiritual nature. It's not our religious nature, but it's our spiritual nature, the way we connect heart to heart, telepathically, with life, with all things. And that there's certain people that have this more pronounced in them. And then they struggle with, again, the verbiage or how to explain it. But really, it's a place where they want to belong. They want to, there's a value there. They know something is true, or they know something that they're feeling, but they don't want to feel weird. They want to, everybody wants to feel valued. And we do that. We value that, because to me, in the big picture, people that have these abilities are expressing more of their wholeness. We actually put it between left brain and right brain. You know, like we live in this very left brain dominant society that wants to gauge everything with logic and rational thought and sequential ordering and, you know, all these different things, certain languages. And then there's this other part of us that is in the oneness and the spiritual, kind of like what you're talking about, the soup. You know, it's like there's this wholeness there. Mm-hmm. And what we do at LightSong is we really teach you how to tap into that right side of the brain, or the heart is another way of saying it. The heart does the same thing. And that then just produces people that are a greater version of themselves. Or the spirits call it, most people in the Western society are lopsided. They call it, you know, you're all off to the one side, all on the left side of that rational thought. And no, we're trying to really flesh out the wholeness of you and bring forth your gifts that have been latent inside of you. Most people in our culture live in what they call a fight or flight existence. And when you're in fight or flight, you're constantly in this place of trying to maintain or survive. You know, you're worried, you're anxious, you are unsure. And when you're in that type of a status inside of yourself, it's really hard to be creative, or it's really hard to be exploring or curious, because that can feel vulnerable. Wait a minute, I'm not in fight or flight. You know, what if I have to be running from a tiger at any moment? You know, it's crazy how we do this to people. And it's done through our television and computers and the news media, all these things that keep us in this very anxious place. And so this other side of us never really gets to be developed. It is naturally in children, as you were explaining. You know, you had these natural abilities. Most children do, and most kids turn it off by the time they're 4 or 5 years old. You know, as soon as they hit kindergarten. and you got to color in between the lines, or you're wrong. You're labeled as wrong or not doing it right. You're not conforming to these little boxes of the left brain. So, there you have it. But it's just one of those things that we're bringing out that wholeness in people and developing that part of you that is just as real as everything else, and allowing you permission to express that in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that permission piece is so comforting. I remember showing up to one class and asking, I think it was like 3 years ago, and something bad was happening in the world or something, and I was like, I just don't feel unhappy about it. Is it okay that I feel happy and okay? And you were like, yes, please do. And I was like, thank you for the permission.
Yeah. I had somebody say that today, actually, to me, that like, oh my God, I feel good, but I feel bad about feeling good because look at what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And I just said, feeling good is one of the greatest medicines you can give to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand things on an energetic level, that our feelings are part of the universal web that we're all connected to, and
Mm-hmm.
that they can heal people.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So AmberJane, did you want to say anything about the altar book and that type of thing?
Yeah. That was a gift from COVID times. I have it's what I love about when you step into the mystery of life, when you have that, when you feel like spirit has your back, your allies have your back, things are working for your most benevolent outcome, then you have this openness and this curiosity and less of an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Like your agenda is around, manifesting good experiences versus like these 3 things or these 5 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been hosting new moon circles I did for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one way that I got to like practice, doing my invocation and practice drumming in front of people and singing. And so it was a really beautiful way for me to kind of step out of my own comfort zone of doing that. And this woman who came and saw the altars that I created, she asked me to create an altars class. And at the time I was like, I don't know that I know anything about altars. I don't know that, I'm not an altar teacher. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I do. So I started pulling all of this wisdom and revisiting some of the teachings in LightSong and in other places. And I ended up realizing that creating sacred space is something that I do really naturally. And it has such a huge effect on my emotional and mental wellness. Mm-hmm. So when I started to see people on Zoom at the beginning of quarantine, people were in houses that had boxes around them or stuff or clutter, or they didn't even have a place to work and now they had to work online. Mm-hmm. And managing all the people in the house for people who were, coupled and had families. And the stress level was getting so huge. And I started realizing, oh my gosh, people don't have like a sacred, safe place to go and have their spiritual or mindfulness practice. And how through altar creation, not only is it a mindfulness and practice and a way to connect with spirit, but it also creates a beautiful place you can go to that feels safe. Mm-hmm. And even if it's a corner of your room, it can bring down your stress level. Mm-hmm. Just by visually interacting with it. And so I started using our understanding of intentions
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about having intentions and creating intentions. And I broke down all the different types of altars you could make with an intention behind it. So you could have a grief altar.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a manifesting altar that just has pictures and things of maybe places you want to go or things that you want to have. You can have healing altars. If someone is sick, you could create this altar where you go and you see them in their vibrancy.
Mm-hmm.
You could have teaching altars when you're teaching. So there were honoring altars for people who have passed, or like my altar has lots of my guides and allies on it. So it ended up becoming what I thought was just going to be like this little blog, or maybe like a, here's a 1, 2, 3 steps on altars, ended up becoming this book. And I even have like tons of pictures of the altars I have created over the last few years. And that to me felt like such a good way to take just some elements where you don't have to be spiritual guru or like a shamanic practitioner, or dedicate a huge portion of your life of learning spiritual ways. But here, if you learn the practice of creating sacred space, how it can help you with your emotional, mental stress,
Mm-hmm.
and help you feel safer in the world when the world seems so chaotic.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. And I love the way that you differentiated that altars is a way of expressing a particular thing, or bringing in the power of something. And even when you're grieving, you can have an altar to help you move through the grief. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And when people are sick, we can do little altars. I know when my cat was sick years ago, I took some of his fur and put it in a little pouch and made a little altar for him, with his little DNA there, and put my allies on it to help him. And it's amazing how well that all worked. It's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. And again, if you want to contact AmberJane, it's at AmberJaneHealing.com. Yes, AmberJaneHealing.com. And you can see her books there. She has a beautiful website that talks about the different services that she offers, which are very vast and nice. It's nice to see one of the LightSong students getting out there in the world and really bringing your talents to life. So thank you, AmberJane. It's been delightful talking with you.
Oh, thank you, Jan. Always.
Okay. I'm going to sign off for now. Bye-bye. I don't have my glasses on. Let me see. Oh, wait.